Right, surprise. Let's do it.
Oh, it's live now. All right, welcome guys to brand new Poker Player podcast. I'm your host, Andreas. And today's podcast guest is a German player. He plays high stakes, some of the biggest tournaments in the world. He has 4 WSOP bracelets. He has 80 million in cashes and is well known as not only a GTO, but he also a DTO wizard. Welcome to the Poker Player podcast, Dominik Nitsche.
Hi guys, yeah, pleasure to be here. See if we can answer some fun questions.
Cool, let's get started. So the first thing I want to ask you is, I mean, you got into poker in 2006. That's been a very long time ago, I feel like. And what was your start like getting into poker? How did you start the game?
Yeah, well, pretty much get into poker like anyone else. I think in school, you know, someone watched it on TV, and then we all started watching it together eventually. Watched the World Series back then. And then we all decided we'd all make our own little home game. You know, we play sit and goes and whatnot, and then we just eventually find like online sites because we all wanted to get better at poker, right? So we Googled how to get better at poker, ended up finding Poker Strategy, and I signed up. You know, played a couple of free rolls online. My friends signed up, also played a couple of free rolls online. I was lucky enough to get things going. They weren't. And I'm still here like a couple of years later playing the same game.
All right, awesome. Did you have like a breakthrough moment these first few years in the sit and go, or did you just, you know, grind it up from like the lowest, from that deposit and never look back?
Well, I started with, playing free rolls, playing, I believe, $3 sit and goes on Ultimate Bet back in the day. That's where I had my first major breakthrough. Really good bankroll management, obviously. You know, $50, you take $3 and you play sit and goes. Completely crushed the sit and goes on Ultimate Bet. Ran it up. That's just what happened. I played sit and goes until, well, pretty much for 2 years, just sit and goes. Back when they were still good. I would get up to $100 sit and goes on full tilt back in the day. There's a lot of rake back. So that was nice. I would just grind those for ages and ages. And eventually I always just played tournaments on the side, you know. I'd just be like, tournaments. Back then I was still in high school, so I needed school holidays to play the late session because back then America was still online, so all the tournaments were in the evening. So I would then eventually play $11 tournaments and all that stuff. And I still remember that in my first school holidays, I had a $900 score in $11 tournament. But I was pretty much just a sit and go player for the most time. Tournaments were just fun for me until eventually the games kind of died down in sit and goes. They were really tough at the 109s. They were really tough at the 215s. There was not much traffic, so I decided I'm just going to fire up every single tournament I see on the schedule, and we'll go from there. And so I would come back from school, fire up every single tournament I see, and then go to sleep at around 3 in the morning and wake up at 7. And that was my life pretty much.
Okay. Was there ever like a huge setback for you during those years between like 2006 and 2012, where your bankroll actually took quite a hit because of a downswing, or did you just, you know, very smoothly with solid bankroll management grind it up? Or was it some setback?
Well, with tournaments, you know, you can't just with tournaments it's pretty much impossible to have this smooth graph that goes like this. I mean, as I was saying in sit and goes, when I realized the games were getting tough and there was just not much money, there was like obviously some sort of like downfall. I wasn't just winning everything and realizing this is not good, you know, because if you win, you kind of think it's, you know, oh yeah, it goes like this forever. But yeah, obviously if you play tournaments, there will be a couple swings that are far bigger than you would ever imagine. You know, you go down 10,000, and if you're some kid in high school who's just getting started, you know, losing 10,000, it just doesn't feel that nice. It still doesn't feel nice today. But yeah, the game is just the game, and I was kind of fortunate enough to not have had anything too soul crushing. You know, I would always be able to grind it back up, you know, and just had a couple big scores in my career, so that's nice. But yeah, moving up the stakes actually was a very smooth progression. There's never a stake where I sat there and said I can't beat those guys. It's just not because I'm a super genius, but rather because the games were just that easy. You know, back then, $100 tournaments probably weren't much tougher than $10 tournaments. So it was just a matter of grinding up the bankroll. Grinding I was good at, I just, as I said earlier, I just fire up everything. So yeah, tournaments were just super easy back then. So that's the real truth. And yeah, so the swings are tough though, yeah.
For the viewers also to understand here, what, you were in high school, at what point, or what bankroll, was it like 50K, 100K, or like at what bankroll point did you decide to go all in and say, well, you know what, I'm going to go all in on poker. This is what I'm going to do for the next 10 years or 5 years or just next year's for however long, and I'm not going to get a job?
Pretty much never, because it just sort of happened. I was
okay.
Yeah, you're just looking at it as a game. I was just like, I'm in high school, get to play this game all the time. Don't really enjoy high school that much. So yeah, I was just playing, and I remember very clearly on just like a couple of weeks before my 18th birthday, I broke 100K in profit. So that was a pretty big number. And I was like, it's a big number, and you see that you're sort of happy with that number, and you're like, whoa, I kind of want to see what I can turn it into. So that's when I decided I'm going to try to take a shot at a couple live tournaments. Way back then, there was Aussie Millions just a couple months later. It's always been my dream to play Aussie Millions. It's a beautiful place, as a kid from a small town in Germany, who gets to go to Australia? And so that's the one I set my mind to. And I actually ended up winning a qualifier on B-Win just right after I turned 18. It was really nice. So that was very helpful to win that. Yeah, and then basically from there on out, I decided, this live poker thing is actually really even softer than online. I can make a whole bunch of money here, and these guys have no idea what they're doing. This is great. So I guess I made a real decision to just go for it in January 2019. 2009, obviously.
Yeah.
But no, but I was still in school, and I was still. Yeah, you're a kid back then when you're 17, 18. You're just looking at the game. It's fun to see the numbers on the screen go up. You don't think of it as actual money you can buy stuff with. And then a couple months later, I ended up winning LAPT Argentina. And that was pretty much the moment where I said, well, you know what? I'll just play some more poker. This is kind of easy.
Yeah, seemed all easy. So for the careful listeners as well, before you were 18, you hit that 100K. So did you end up cashing out all that money, or did the sites confiscate some of it?
No, I got to keep all the money.
Okay, that is good. Like if you get it out early enough. But did at some point you have to change the username or something because they found out?
But this is the thing, right? If you Google my username on Stars, you can just go way back to 2007.
Oh, okay.
So there's no point in me keeping this a secret, because if you just type in my username, you will eventually see when I started playing. Also, shout out to Poker Firma, who Rosie wrote a great article about me way back then, saying, how is this possible that Dominik has statistics going back to 2007 if he only just turned 18? I was like, well, it's, again, this is between me and the site, obviously.
Sure.
And
But I mean, in economics, and there's this 5 to 10 year thing where at some point I think, economically you let go of that stuff, I guess. And I guess
no, of course, let go of that stuff. I was just joking around because everyone pretty much knows I started playing when I was 16, and it's not a big deal. I'm assuming it's a much bigger deal now, but back then. Back then, I guess the sites didn't care as much.
Mm-hmm. So that's good to get away with it. I mean, I know.
Don't do it nowadays, guys. That's not what I'm saying. Don't be.
Don't do it, guys. Don't play
now it's fucking. Now it's dangerous. Don't do it. But,
you're gonna lose all your money.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I think they're going to be pretty strict on that.
I just believe right now there's no point in me, keeping it secret. It's you find it out in 2 minutes if you want to, anyway.
Yeah, of course. So now that you have made that transition to live poker, you mentioned that you saw that in those years it was so incredibly soft. And back then, at some point in 2012, 13, solvers became a little bit more popular. This PO solver in No Limit Hold'em. When did you start working with solvers?
I mean,
roughly like 2 years or. Or did you also see
fairly early on, I think. Certainly for tournament players, must have been among the first ones to start using it. Yeah, 2000 came out 2012. Did it that early? I don't remember.
Probably. I mean, I for sure haven't used PO Solver before 2014, I think, and
14.
I
14
haven't
makes
used
sense.
it as much. Yeah,
14, 15 possibly.
Could be.
15.
So when do, I mean, this is now pretty much also a couple of years. When did you notice like people using these programs more often? I guess we can fire the shots later about people who will never use it.
Go on to shot. All right, but no, actually, you can say that there's a progression there. You can, back then you used to go to America and you could clearly see that no one had any idea what they were doing in 2012, 13. And then obviously all these guys you see at the higher stakes, they got so much better. And I would say there's been a recent progress, say, I want to say recent as a year and a half, where a bunch of guys that were sort of thought of as like mediocre wrecks that you could win a bunch of money from, they've improved tremendously. And well, occasionally you would sit next to them on the table and you would have them looking at Monker Solver on their phones, and you kind of that's when you figure out that you're like, wait a second, maybe these guys just finally catching on to what we've been doing for years. And the thing is with solvers is once you dedicate time to it, you'll improve really, really quickly, right? So before you were beating these guys for a really good win rate, and now they're sort of on your level. Because the way it works with solvers is you can get a lot of it out pretty quickly. And if you want to get like a lot more out, you can still do so, but the edge you get from that is very tiny in comparison, right? So for me to like have an edge on someone like this, maybe I have a slight edge. It's probably not enough to ever quantify in a real game. So I'm just, playing for much smaller edges these days. And yeah, that's certainly a progression that's happened at the higher stakes. And I think that's something anyone can benefit from as well, to get to this point. Because if you are at this point, you're certainly going to be crushing live 5Ks, possibly 10Ks fairly easily. It's not that hard to get to that level where you can completely beat all these guys that haven't done any solver study.
So, yeah, I mean, I've heard you also in different podcasts, and you were talking about solvers and people who are not using it, and that you just can literally feel the edge at the table when or you just have a lot of confidence because you worked all these hours on solvers, and you know that if people haven't done that, you believe that the intuitive thoughts that we have in poker, they're never going to be as good as what you work out in solvers, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Pretty much.
It's the same in any game. Humans can be as smart as they want. They're never going to be as smart as a machine. It's 2019, guys. The AI is so far ahead of us in anything, and certainly a game which is entirely numbers, which is poker. I bet on the machine.
Could you think of a spot, or what spot do you think, maybe 2 years or 3 years ago, you obviously don't have to mention anything from the games now, but let's say you discovered a spot from 2-3 years ago that people now corrected on the highest stakes, but that was maybe way off intuitively compared to what a solver would say?
Thinking about it. Narrowing it down to spots, I just go with something very generic and say bet sizing. People used to have people would used to play like imaginary pot limit. They would think, oh, I can't bet more than the pot. This is a pot, and overbets would be used very incorrectly, if at all. That's one thing, and if that's too boring of an answer, it's also the opposite. Like a quarter pot or less bet was never really used by a human in any way. Now it's very common to see it used correctly on the turn and river in exactly the right spots. And also another one, very simple, is c-betting when you have a range advantage and not c-betting when you don't. So yeah, just overall, I want to say bets. Does that make sense? There's just so much that's changed there that I don't want to single out one. But like all these things, if you put them together, and back then you were playing against a guy who's sort of good, but he doesn't like c-bet enough, and he like doesn't overbet enough, then it's sort of easy to play those guys. And yeah, I don't know why someone's calling me. That person knows I'm on a podcast. Hang on. What the fuck is he doing?
Okay, sure, second.
Okay. Yeah, but back then, bet sizings mostly were just way off across the board. People would tend to just bet half the pot all the time. And yeah, nowadays there's just much more variety when it comes to bet sizing.
People have just figured it out in the last few years that they can implement more of that. So when you then went on to do a lot of solver studies, when did you come up with the idea? I also want to go over to also your new project that's now live for, I think, a week, DTO Poker.
Right.
When did you come up with that idea?
Oh, Marcus and I came up with DTO almost a year ago to this day. Yeah, Marcus is a good friend of mine, former horse. So I used to stake him for tournaments, and I wanted to get him ready for the high stakes because he had a bunch of the Party Poker Live dollars that we wanted to get rid of rather quickly. Wanted to put them all into play in the Bahamas or something as fast as possible. So we had a bunch of coaching sessions. Yeah, and we found that traditional ways of coaching weren't as effective. So eventually it just got to a point where I would tell him, okay, you have this end, this is the board. Now you have to play it across the solver, and I'll just run you through it, and I'll tell you where you go wrong. And also any hand he played would then be checked against the solver afterwards. So he'd have something to learn on his own time where I wasn't around. He could just take his hands, cross-reference my database, and then compare to solver outputs. And we found that he's learned extremely quickly doing this. Now, when he did this, he got much more confident. He started recognizing patterns much faster. And so for him, it wasn't so much about looking at the charts. It was more about, playing and getting immediate feedback that helped him a lot. So one day he just said to me, you know what, we should just turn this into an app, because if we turn it into an app, a lot of people are going to like this. And yeah, that's exactly what people want. So I said, I don't know, can we make enough money out of this? Is this really worth it? And it's been a lot of work. Yeah, but feedback's been good so far. So I think people do like it. And yeah, I hope this continues.
Yeah, so for all you guys here in the chat who don't know what DTO Poker is yet, DTO Poker is a GTO app that shows you 20 big blind and 30 big blind stack sizes in tournaments, and it basically gives you a hand versus another hand in a single race pot, where you then have to make a choice what bet size to choose, or of course to check, and then the app will give you feedback in game or while you do this hand, and then you basically get to know whether you have made the right choice. And you are going to be able to see that in the link in the description below. After the stream, I'll put a link down there so you can all find DTO Poker as well. Is there anything else that you would like to add to that? I mean, that
sums it up pretty well. Yeah, that's what the app does. Yeah, because everyone's just going to ask, when's there more deeper stacked spots? And the answer to that is most likely next month. So.
And what stack depth would you add in first, like 50 or?
We're going to go up to 50. We're thinking we're going to release 20 more situations. Yeah, up to 50. It's going to be like all the way up to 50. There's going to be some more short stack stuff. There's some 40 big lines. Yes, anything. The goal is anything. We can put in what the users want, really.
And you mentioned that you were coaching Marcus, and his success was rather quickly. And I think on DTO Poker, you also see his graph and how it changes after you've been coaching him with solver output and then comparing with the database. And so what was the time span? Because I didn't see that. I just was going over it a bit quickly, but what was like the time span, not a number of tournaments, but the time span that happened?
Time span for him? Must have just been a couple months, because I wasn't staking him for that long. Okay. We started working together in December the year before, and then he started grinding from January. So the graph must have sort of been January until he pretty much stopped. Yeah, it starts in January 2008, and then in November he pretty much stopped playing to work full time on the DTO. So like the last couple hundred games he just played on the side, but pretty much 90% of the volume must have come from January until November.
Okay, so the entire last year, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, roughly. Okay. So yeah, if you guys want to also check that out, you can find it on the website as well. And that's like an example of someone you coach. And yeah, I think the overall approach of I think coaching in general should be that you teach somebody to learn by himself, because I think when people are looking for a coach, what they really want is that they are going to be independent learners. Of course, a lot of people, they also want the magic pill and they just want to be good. You turn them into someone in poker, and it's really not the goal. But I think that you just help them improve by themselves, because otherwise, what would they need a coach for if they can do it all by themselves anyway? And sometimes it might be even better to tell them, look, you can do that all by yourself. Why don't you give it a try? But then if you need some help, I can still coach you. So what's your take on it? Is that more or less summing it up?
This sounds pretty good. What I want to say is a coach can be helpful, obviously. Otherwise you won't know where to look. Maybe you don't know how to operate a solver. Maybe you just get confused along the way and you just focus on the wrong questions using a solver. A solver is not that easy. So it definitely helps to have someone along with you for the ride to at least work you into this, sort of explain the key concepts to you. And then when it comes to reviewing hands, I don't see too much need to be the one doing the review all the time. You can do it for your students and it's helpful. But also if you give them the tools along the way and say look, if I'm not available because I play a lot of live poker, I have the app I'm working on, so I can't always be there for you, but you have access to my database, you can cross-reference everything with solutions. And if you then have any questions, then you can come to me. I find that's a very helpful process a lot of people have, for a lot of people. So yeah, I think a lot of people, what they're looking for in a coach, and which I think is exactly the wrong way, they're looking for some leader that teaches them everything, that's always right. And, they don't make mistakes. People look at their coaches as a sort of gods almost that don't have leaks in their game, which is obviously not true. I have leaks in my game. And I know every single other person who plays high stakes has leaks in their game, as small as they may be. So what I always try to say is don't take anything a human being tells you as gospel. It's yeah, they're probably right, but it's not 100% they're right. And certainly they make mistakes as well. So you should, if you want to get really good, you got to study on your own time. And, if you want to ask a coach for an opinion, that's fine. But always keep in mind that, it's their personal opinion. And unless you've verified it, it's probably not best to just blindly trust it,
Would you even go as far and say that somebody who basically in quotes retired but has access to solvers and would teach with solvers could actually be a good coach as well, compared to somebody who has incentives to not teach you everything potentially, and basically because that's a little bit the thing about coaches. I think that there's always the incentive, especially if somebody's playing in your game, to basically not take someone on as a student. I'm sure that you've had maybe requests even in high stakes players that say, can you tell me what my leaks are? And then you would have to mention him a really high price.
Well, of course, there's is there really any incentive to give everything away if you make it, a tournament course? Is there a lot of incentive to provide a good product? Or is it just more incentive to make it sound nice so people buy it? That's just the game, unfortunately. You don't know, and I find that there's a lot of products out there that do take advantage of customers who just don't know any better. They see a course and it's their they have this new guy who won a bunch of stuff, teaching them stuff, and then they take their word as gospel.
Would you go as far as quantify that, or mention one program one way or the other? Would you vouch for a program?
Vouch for a program. I'm assuming Fado's new one is pretty good. I haven't seen it yet, obviously, because it's not out yet. But sure. I'm looking forward to Fado and Matthias' product, because I'm friendly with both of them, and I assume they will put out a good product. And that's not to say that all the other products are bad. I'm just saying that every product someone puts out there is not going to be perfect, right? So whatever they teach you, it's not always perfect. And I think actually what's going to be different about their course is that they work very extensively with solvers as well. So I actually think that if I'm looking for a program, a course to recommend, it would be their course, because I know how good Matthias is with solvers. And we almost asked him to work with us on DTO as well. But yeah, as I said, the thing is always be careful who you're buying from, and just because someone tells you something that sounds good, as you said, like why would someone give you away all the secrets, And especially gotta be careful if they use some sort of like simulation just to make a point, or something like. If it's actually really tough to say that, you gotta be really in tune with the solvers and everything. Yeah, actually, now that I think about it, it's actually really hard to say who's just telling you a bunch of what do you call that? Basically, just making something sound like great, but really, it's just that's good. But they make it sound like it's the greatest thing in the world. That's probably when someone is lying to you.
That's a very, very good thought. I think it's that there's always incentives to basically, also in wording. I learned a lot from like some just business videos where people would, sell courses and they would use words as instant access and like all these new words in business where you would use for basically.
We're guilty of that too, before you say it, we're guilty of that too, obviously. And it's just, that's just the game, those words work. It's just the marketing game.
It's not
I'm not a marketing guy, but I'm also far too honest. One thing I was very careful on our website is that everything that says it on there is actually that's 100% spot on.
It's not true. Yeah.
Yeah.
That you don't come up with something random and promise.
No.
Yeah.
We got numbers that sound good, but nothing's lie, and there's no lie.
Okay. So, is there anything else that you would want to mention about DTO poker that you would like people to know, or?
I just take questions if people have questions. It's sort of hard for me to answer questions because a bunch of other stuff, people have been asking in our Discord, and I try to be very present there and always answer that. Twitter, I've been engaging a lot with customers, and so it's very difficult for me to say what people want to know. Just that, so far I've been happy with the feedback, and
also enjoy here in the podcast. What's the price range you will have? Like right now, it's $10 a month, or what was it? 20?
10. The goal for that was actually very simple. We just wanted to be accessible to everyone, and the reason for that is quite simple. We're just very confident in what we're selling. It's that simple, I say, like, we want to do something where everyone can learn from, and we don't want it to be exclusive at the bottom tier. So we're just thinking we want to roll out the $10 tier first, get a bunch of feedback, see how it goes, and then sort of go from there. And $10, I think it's affordable for everyone who plays the micro stakes, has heard of solvers, is kind of intimidated by them because they're too expensive, too confusing, and whatnot. So I believe that there's room to teach everyone some concepts that they can learn from for the price of $10 a month. And what we're going to do is we're going to change up the spots every couple of weeks so people can practice in different spots and get them some good value for their $10 every couple of weeks. And then future plans include fairly soon going to launch a new tier, much more geared towards professionals, obviously, higher priced. It's gotta be. And there's going to be a bunch of exciting things in there. So we're not just doing something for the recreational, but there will also be something for the real high stakes professional, and it's got some sick features. So
will that include like also having access to the back end of it, or the solves, or the sims themselves in Pio?
No, absolutely not. We're not giving away back end access to anything, but it's going to be more like a more advanced tool to analyze your play. For example, you can play 100 hands, and you're going to get a feedback score afterwards to see where you deviate, how you deviated, how much you're losing, and all that stuff. So it's going to be much more of this. In the distant future, there's going to be some ICM situations. Very distant future. We're going to do probably around 20 playable spots, 15 to 20. You're going to be able to play offline. It's in the works. So there's like all these cool things that we have planned. And also one thing that a lot of people asked for is population mistakes, so you can see like, how many people make mistakes here and there. So like all that good stuff we can do in the future. It's just currently in the works. So we're hoping we can all throw that out there eventually, but we don't want to give access to a complete simulation. That's not how our system is set up anyway, quite honestly. And also for now, we don't want to. And this, however, may change in the future.
Okay, sure. Now, recently, like in the last couple of years, the more and more solvers become prominent, people have become afraid of the solvers, that, the more people that have access to it will kill all the games. what would you tell people who think that solvers are so bad for the poker industry and they're going to kill all the games?
Well, okay. Solvers are just a tool like any other tool to get better at poker. Just like Poker Stove, yes. Just like Poker Stove was back then. Just like Card Runners EV was after that. Just like ICMI that was for Sit and Goes and all these other programs. They're all just programs to help you get better at poker. I like to compare it to chess personally, where in chess there's all these supercomputers out that you can run on your phone and no human can beat you. Well, thankfully we're not quite there yet in poker, but I don't think that ruins the game. It's just that it puts the game on a much more advanced level if you want to play it competitively. If you want to beat a fish, you don't need a solver for that. You just need to sit there and play about as boring, tight as you possibly can, and the fish will eventually give you all their money anyway. That's how the game works. But if you want to compete against the best and the best, much like chess or backgammon, you're going to have to put in the hours. That's never been different. Whether you put the hours in with Pyro Solver or Poker Stove, as I said earlier, it doesn't really matter. It's just that now we have more efficient tools, much like there's now much better chess programs. It's, actually, I find it really fascinating that new programs come out. It makes it more fun. Certainly for me, put the game on a much higher level. And actually, what I want to say is I find it makes the game more accessible, because before then, getting this information was really, really hard and it was taking so much time. But now you can get this information much more quickly, even for $10 a month on your phone. And that's one thing that I find very interesting in the game, is that everyone gets better. Everyone gets better, and the information is always going to become more and more accessible.
Just part of the game. There you have it, guys. It's just $10 a month. You can already improve at poker a lot more, more quickly than years ago. And what I also wanted to mention to that is that the only thing that I believe that makes it a little bit of a deadly combination with the improvement, because I wouldn't worry about like people improving, because you can improve yourself too. You have the same methods like the solvers. You can do the same thing, just better. You can work harder. You can outwork people. But the only thing that makes it different from chess and all these other games that are heavily skill-based, especially on the long run, is that you have these other force of Rake, which basically makes it a non-zero sum game anymore. And then at some point when people actually don't allow you to have as high of a win rate against them anymore, you will just have a problem, basically. And I think with the high stakes, this gets a little bit solved by having business people in there who have a lot of very high loss rates, basically. And also the Rake is actually substantially lowered from a 10% tournament fee down to 2% and sometimes rake free. Is there anything what people could do? Like at the mid stakes, the games are always going to be a little bit softer, but what if the Rake forces, especially like cash games online, I would say especially at the entry levels, they're sometimes quite annoying because you have such a high Rake, and you actually need to be substantially better than your opposition in order to move up and build your bankroll.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. The Rake is a huge issue that I quite frankly think isn't talked enough about. Just to give you my perspective from the high stakes, as we talked about before the podcast, there's British Poker Open going on right now, which is a really good idea, a really fun tournament structure. I actually like the event, but there is just no fun players. And, it's problematic to play those games where, as you just said, the edges have become so small that what's the point of even playing? The edges are so small. That's the reason why high stakes heads up cash died, because everyone's sort of playing, either they have a bot or they're playing like a bot, so close that it almost doesn't matter if you're playing a bot, right? That's why high stakes heads up no limit died. That's why high stakes heads up PLO only runs with a complete fun player in the mix. It's the same with games only run if there's a really big fun player at high stakes, and that's because everyone is so good. Everyone's so good to a point where the low Rake doesn't even matter anymore. I think people pretty much wouldn't even battle if it was no Rake, as we can see in the British Poker Open right now. And that's kind of messed up, and I don't know how to fix that. Unless a fun player shows up, no one wants to battle. I certainly don't want to bet.
For the stakes, I guess.
Yeah, but I don't know what to do about it because I don't want to go play 100K against the best in the world just for a little bit of rake back. It's just not enough money for me. Like you get 1% back. Is that really like worth the time to travel there, sit there for hours in a game where you might be minus EV just so they can put on a show? I mean, no. So I don't really know what to do about this. Obviously.
On the other hand, do you get motivated by the lineup itself, by being able, how does it feel to play a field where you feel like you have maybe a 1%, 2% ROI or something, or maybe even 0.5% ROI? Would you do it for the competition, or does it technically, if everyone's like almost at the same level and you're like 0.5% better to win than the other guy now in terms of ROI, is it then not a game of gambling all of a sudden because you have no skill at?
Exactly, right. And also, quite honestly, isn't it just a waste of time? Because you gotta not just look at it like, oh, can I make like maybe a couple $100 by sitting here, or could I just sit at home, grind the online series, that's more fun. I'm in the convenience of my home, get to hang out with people I like, and I enjoy my environment and just all these things, so you gotta factor in opportunity cost as well. And then suddenly this doesn't look very attractive anymore to just play like a tournament that's not really worth it. If there were a bunch of recreationals, we wouldn't be doing this podcast right now. I'd be in London playing the 100K. But yeah, truth be told, it doesn't. You just don't battle. You don't go out to battle the best in the world for substantial money. Because also, as we said earlier, in the 100Ks, we all sell a bunch of actions. So should I just go to my backer and say like, look, I want to play this 100K. I cannot guarantee you that I'm even profitable, but I want to have some fun and battle against the best. The guy's just going to tell you, what's wrong with you? Okay.
Sure, it's not only on you to invest constantly, but also your back.
Right. I wouldn't do it anyway. Possibly other people, in the business have those backers who just tell me, I go play this,
Apparently, there's some guys they play from their own role, or they have some backers who think it's a great idea to battle with the others. But
some people just pretend to play from their own role to look like big shots on social media. Anyway,
that could be true as well. I mean, recently,
that's true, but that's
what would you like? We had that $1 million tournament, £1 million tournament, biggest poker tournament in history. What are your thoughts on people having pieces of themselves? And I would also want to know about your thoughts about Bryn Kenny, because people are having pieces of themselves. Let everyone have whatever they want. It's who am I to tell people how much money they're supposed to put up? I don't know their financial circumstances. I don't care, and let people play as they want. There is no written rule against it, and I don't know. How
what
much?
About Bryn Kenny though?
What? How much would you have guessed that he had? Because it was like I was debating.
Somewhere between 1% and 99%. I genuinely with Bryn Kenny, you don't know. Love the guy. I love Bryn Kenny, but you don't know how much money he put up. He said 50%. For his sake, I hope it's true. But do you really know for sure? That's all I'm saying, right? You didn't see it. You don't see his bank account, how much money he got there and how much he got to keep, right?
Of course.
So basically, whether I tell you that I always have 100% of myself because, I'm rich from, I could just tell a bunch of people I'm rich from outside of poker and I just play 100Ks for fun. And then no one would know that I'm staked. You don't know anyway, right? That's my point. So who are we to speculate about something we have no way of proving, right? There's I saw a bunch of shit saying like, oh, Christoph has 5% in the. That was the funniest thing I read. They said Christoph has the smallest piece of themselves in that thing, and everyone thinks Bryn Kenny has the biggest piece of themselves in the thing. Like, how do you know this?
Just because of the attitude, yeah.
Just because Christoph is German, this is this thing all over again, where they don't like him, and that's why they say he has the smallest piece, and he's only staked. I can tell you one thing: Christoph did not have the smallest piece. This is not even remotely close to true.
There you have it.
This is just
insider knowledge now.
That's the worst guess ever. I'm sorry. That was fucking terrible.
Yeah, I think the guess was though that who was the guy playing under Leon?
Martin Cabral.
Yeah, Cabral. possible.
I don't know.
But yeah, in the end, I think
I don't care either. That's the point.
Yeah, it doesn't matter much. But in poker, what's really interesting is like people in general, not just in poker, but they think they know a lot more than they actually do. And in poker, it's just so deceptive because it's just so easy to think you know something. And I think one of the maybe you put it in your own words, but the most overused word is like exploitative and DTO. Like I think this is supposed to be this, and people haven't run a single sim for it, and they just think,
of course.
Yeah, and I'm sure I've done it more often 2 years ago, 3 years ago, but have become a lot more careful. Also observing high stakes players and realizing like how the attitude was among some of the best. And that they would say, they're not sure, and they're gonna have to, look at the spot, and they, just express such a little amount of certainty about something, that just sets one of the most important skill sets for a high stakes player, I think, and that is to give something the benefit of a doubt, and basically then try to move on forward and try to better that, and work it out by yourself afterwards. And I think
one guy. Mm-hmm. One guy who was sort of ahead of the curve with that is Ben Salsky. His run and ones videos would always just be him saying, I'm really not sure what to do here. I suppose this is fine sometimes. Next hand. And then and a lot of people would say to him, I don't like this video. You're not giving me any real information. You're just saying this is fine, and that is fine, and this is fine, and that is fine. And then a couple of years later, every high stakes tournament player in the world is exactly the same. They're all like, yeah, this is fine, and that is fine. Pio says do this sometimes. And that's really the truth here. A lot of decisions are fine. You can do a lot of things. And it's most important to learn to not completely screw up and not make any completely terrible plays. A lot of guys who try to teach you, no, this is right, and that is right. It's what I was saying earlier. They have an agenda. They want to sell you something. They want you to look at them as the overlord who has all the right answers, while the truth is much more nuanced, like we were just saying. Yeah, well, actually, you can do this sometimes and you can do this sometimes, but most of the time you should be doing this. But if you're trying to sell someone something, clearly which one sounds better, which one's going to get you more sales. So, yeah.
I think there was like a moment as well. It was like 2 years ago or so, where in PLO, Monker Solver, the Sims, they got more and more prominent as well. And it was like this guy, and he asked me, is this a C bet? And I'm like, I don't know.
No, of course you don't know.
Queen A3 rainbow board. You got like ace queen blah blah, and I mean it's probably like super close in EV whether you bet or check or C bet. I don't know. Yeah, and then you could check back and protect your check back range a little bit, or you could bet, and then when you get check raised, if you have a backdoor flush draw, you can continue, and then it's dependent on the check raising range and how much equity you would have against his bluffs, and how much your removal of the other 3 cards would affect it. But in the end, you don't know, and the more developed I think you get as a poker player, the more you realize that you're not going to answer this is a C bet, but it's like mentioning reasons, or mentioning more said like what drives the EV up and down. I think that's much more important, because as you say, everything is very close, and there's clear fuck ups, and those you have to get rid of. And afterwards, it's really about what drives EV up, what drives EV down. I think I realize more and more that also with pre-flop sims in Monker, because a lot of them, I think in No Limit and in PLO, they're so heavily dependent on people cold call ranges, and these most No Limit 6 max sims, I think they don't have cold calling in the cutoff and hijack. So that affects the EV of certain holdings so much, and it's all relative.
Certainly none of this stuff is perfect, right? Pre-flop, GTO, multi-way. It's an idea, Monker Solver is just an idea trying to solve a problem that's far too complex. And I think that's important for people to realize. The outputs you get are good. That's important. The outputs you get are really good. You can use them. They're better than anything else you have. But are they perfect? No. God, no. That doesn't matter. Right? This is the best we have.
Going back to the overall attitude, I think you mentioned Christoph Vogelsang, and I think that the whole debate with him having a hoodie and a scarf. You mentioned before a little bit that there were a lot of personal attacks on him. And could you elaborate a little bit more on that and how that went down from your end as a friend, and what do you think about that whole thing going after players?
Well, I just think that this is just not okay. You don't single out a guy who's a paying customer in your tournaments just because he dresses in a way you do not approve of. That's complete nonsense. And that's for one. From an operator perspective, you don't get to go after one of your customers. That's crazy. You don't get to do this. As a fellow player, I don't think you get to do it either. It's much more understandable. But you don't, as long as the guy's not breaking any rules, you just gotta shut up and take it, because as far as I know, there's no rule against this. And no one's a bad word to say about Christoph, who's just a really nice guy, great player. So yeah, guys, just bullying someone on social media is pretty low, regardless of what they did, and certainly bullying someone because they wear a hoodie over their head to not give away any tells, and who consistently tries to always play his best from the first hand he sits down, which is something I admire, to be honest. You're giving the guy shit for playing his best. That's ridiculous, guys. Like, the guy, if he wants to play his best zipped up in a hoodie, just let him do it. The guy's showing professionalism. He's playing incredibly well. He's also the nicest guy in the world. And just because you don't like it because he takes the game serious and he makes a bunch of money, there's nothing you can do about it, because your goal is to sit down at the table and make the best decisions, right? You can needle him all you want and stuff, but the truth is, he's not going to stop because it makes him money. And if he feels it makes him money, he'll always continue to do so because he wants to make the most money. That's how serious he takes the game. And yeah, if you want to snap act in 5 seconds and burn a bunch of EV every single time you have a decision, hey, be my guest. I know who I'd rather play.
Yeah. On the other hand, I think a very dangerous thing in the poker industry, if we're like talking, okay, if people incentives are all money driven, and people are going to do what and follow through with where money goes, then they're going to do exactly not just what, for example, Vogelsang did in order to disguise his tells, but they're also going to do the whole shutting out thing of players, because it's a money driven incentive. So you're shutting out a really good player, and so I think justifying any action based on money incentives is pretty dangerous to me.
Of course. You'd always find. I want to say sorry. You always find a reason to shut someone out. That's all I wanted to say, right? With Christoph, you just found the tanking and the hoodie. With someone else, you'll find something. And if you can't find anything, he's one of the Germans.
Yeah.
That's all I want to say.
At the same time, would you say that shot clocks have been really good for poker still for 5-6? You're
absolutely
happy? Okay.
Fantastic. Yes.
And what about rules? Like, would you personally, get rid of at least who it is, or like at least covering your entire face? Like doing this being okay, but then having like your face entirely covered not being okay, or would you just say it doesn't matter much?
I'm not against anything here. I think if this is, I don't have a clear opinion, to be honest. I think that if the tournament organizer decided that it's not allowed, it's not allowed, and that's it. And if that's fine. If they think it makes for better TV, I can sort of agree with that, and that's an argument I'll happily follow. Now, if we're going down that rabbit hole, I would like to at least assume that the organizer of the tournament adds some money to the prize pool, or at the very least offers Rake free. I think we're going down a very slippery slope if we're the ones paying thousands and thousands in Rake. We're basically paying for the entire show, right? And they enforce a dress code on us or whatever dumb rules they come up with. That's not okay either, I, for one, believe that if we're paying the Rake, the rules should be as relaxed as possible and player-friendly as possible. We should be inclusive of everyone, not exclusive. And that especially becomes true when we're the ones paying for the stuff to run.
Well, on the other hand, people also always mention like the people who are really paying for the game are the losing players. So, some people think that that losing players get to dictate what the rules are supposed to be, and it has been like that in cash games for quite a bit. And there's actually a pretty big force in poker where cash games become more and more private because apparently the losing player wants to dictate on who he can play with. What is on
my thoughts on this? I think. Okay, here we go. I think mostly these guys, what losing players want and do not want is way too broad of a question for a starter, right? You cannot say every losing player wants to play with this type of player and this type of player, because you're not the guy. You don't get to decide. You don't get to decide what other people want and who they want to play with. A lot of people just want to play with the best in the world, but they've sort of been like dragged into these private games by some parasites who just don't want to play against the other good players and want the fish to themselves. That's the truth. And I think a lot of people are just very vocal and trying to shut out other professionals, that's the truth. I don't think like if a VIP wants to play with his friends, let him play with his friends. That's okay. But what I think is a problem here is if you actively try to influence the guy and say, like, this guy's not good, play with me, play with my friends. That's really unethical behavior to your fellow professionals. And it's just very dirty, If you, Super High Roller Bowl, for example, there's like this invitation list and the pros, and I got shut out one year, which is completely ridiculous, I think, because I play a lot. But no, some casino VIP, not a casino VIP, even just a fun player who is friends with someone got the seat over me. I think that's completely ridiculous. Did I deserve the seat? Maybe, maybe not. I just think the whole politics is what I really hate about the game. I think we should be careful that this doesn't destroy the game. I think we should be careful not to, annihilate the professionals who make the game run in the first place. If you look at London right now, there's 10 professionals battling it out in the 100K. Without those guys, they wouldn't have a tournament. And I find that a lot of the organizers, they should show a little bit more respect towards the super high rollers, because if you keep shutting people out like this, they're not going to come and support you. It's like there's events that consistently shut players out. I'm losing my motivation to go and support. Put it this way. If there's some sort of organization where they run the Super High Roller Bowl, which is like very exclusive with a lottery, but then there's still VIPs and stuff, and they just end up giving their seats to pros. That just makes me kind of not want to play anymore. And the only reason I put up with this is because if I do get in, I make a whole bunch of money, and that's just the truth. And hey, those are all politics that you see in tournaments. They're very open, but in cash games, there's like much more of this, and there's really nothing you can do about it. But I think in tournaments, we have the option to just choose to, not go support. If they keep doing this, then I'll just not go support the events anymore.
I think that's a pretty good point. There's a lot of points in there, and I think poker politics as a skill set got so much more important in the last few years, and it's pretty ridiculous to me as a player, because I'm really would say like very pure or about poker purist, if you want to say that. I just believe in being able to sit down and play whoever you are. That's the beauty of the game. This is how I learned the game, because I learned how to play the game in free rolls in Australia, and there have been people from all age groups. Sure, I was probably the youngest kid at the table all the time because I just learned about poker, but I was so fascinated by it, by the fact that everyone could just sit down and play, and you have the same odds as everyone else, and you just play as good of your abilities, whatever they are, and you just have all your choices. But just seeing also some of the recent tweets of Rob Young, I'm probably going to make a separate video about that, and seeing that there is actually some, not just politics, but a certain way that you should play against players. You should not isolate other players, other VIPs in a cash game, because then they can see less flops. Like, how ridiculous would it be to make a parody about that and say, look, let's play soccer next time. I'm going to play with one leg. You can play with your both legs, and I'm just going to play with one because you're the VIP. You get to have this experience. And I think that went just so far.
I think Rob has good intentions. He's just trying. he's just trying to. He doesn't want to do this until he does something which would make me think that. I think he's just throwing out ideas for the sake of raising a discussion. For the better, good things have come from it. And he said it himself, he does not want to ban winning players.
Okay.
We'll kind of see where it goes, I mean, I'm happy someone tries something. It's just that, I mean, it can't all happen that way. It's just not how the game's supposed to be played, but poker's in a decline, so maybe we should try something. And by all accounts, the Triton million was a success. Well, they can call it a success, of course. So that's why.
In one way, of course, it was the biggest poker tournament of all time, and on the other hand, having that invitational, having that, and it's also there's no metric for people on how they're supposed to behave. You could be the nicest guy, but maybe a really skilled player and be maybe more introverted and quiet. And then what makes you say that this player deserves less to be in the game, even though he's a really nice guy and he just doesn't speak just the others who.
But the point, the truth is always you try to kick out the guy who was going to win the most money. If you're organizing a game, you want to get rid of the biggest winner so you can be a bigger winner. There's nothing else to it, If I think we all get along fine, in the high rollers, there's like guys and stuff. But if you want to shut someone out, you obviously shut out the guys who win the most money, who play the best, and you take any reason you can get, You try to put them at a disadvantage. Like all of these politics that we just alluded to all the time, it's just that people are selfish, Everyone's just looking out for their own best self-interest. And
so does that make yourself understating yourself and being underestimated by your opponent gets a known skill by itself, which I find really interesting because a couple of years ago I was watching these Survivor episodes. It was one of my favorite shows in the US, and what I discovered as a unique skill set in some of these contestants was that some of them were capable of being underestimated by their opponents, and therefore they had a much bigger shot at winning, whereas other players who were maybe as strategically smart, they were shut out because they were transparently strategically smart. That makes actually Survivor for me like even funnier because you're even have to have that additional skill set. And I like those politics, whereas in poker I don't like politics at all. But
that's the
Do you know
the thing, right? Of course. That of course, right? But that's the thing, right? If I was a lot smarter, I would have told everyone I was some fucking Bitcoin rich guy who's just punting around in 100Ks for fun. It turns out I'm not that smart at those kind of politics. I'm just way too honest. And I wouldn't have told anyone I study with solvers. I wouldn't have told anyone what we're working on and all that stuff. I could have, if I was a little bit more shady, like a little bit like more lying and more slimy, but that's just not who I am. I never thought I would get into poker and have to be acting as someone else. I always, as you said so many times, just sit down and play. And I don't think people underestimate me anymore, unfortunately.
Am I right in the assumption that, historically over the last decade, whenever somebody asks you at the poker table, do you do this professionally? You would say, yeah. Is that?
No, I always say I don't really do anything else.
Okay, yeah.
I would say like this. Nowadays, my answer is I'm an app developer or something, and then I just,
Okay, that's just a good way of phrasing it. So it's a little politics. But I always found that also that if somebody asks me, like, I realize a lot of people locally that they don't know, that I do this for a living or that I don't do anything else. And at some point, a random guy says like, yeah, do this all the time. And like, yeah, I play lots of poker and otherwise I'm a teacher, but sometimes they ask, like, are you a poker pro? And then I'm like, okay, however you want to phrase it, man. And I try to not make a big deal out of it. But some people are like, no, never give that information away. You never tell your opponents, you have to get every edge you can. If you say that, it's really bad. And I totally disagree with that.
I'm just way too honest. What's the big deal? Well, apparently the big deal is that you eventually get shut out of the games you used to frequent. I'm a bit bitter about that, honestly. But But hey, nothing I can do about it, unfortunately.
Yeah,
It's just I've always believed in honesty.
I think there's something we can do about it. I have a few ideas, and I think it's just a higher level of awareness among poker players. It's going to take a long time. It might be a problem that's not just in poker but in humanity. But that, you know, I think the driving force here is people's how to say, you know, they're just jealous of other poker players. Like that's the initial thing that happened. People being so envious about others, that has started the whole thing. You can see the whole tweets from people. It's just envy. Like a lot of people, when they comment on these things, it's like their own frustrations that they bring up that they didn't win at poker, which it's true for the majority of the people, right? That then all of a sudden now they have now this outlet. They have now this, you know, sense of victory, even though they have not won at poker. They feel really that sense of victory because now all these winning players are having struggles too because they cannot get into some games. So now they feel good about themselves again, which seems really sad if you think about it.
Absolutely, yeah. As you said, envy, jealousy, call it whatever you want. That's mostly what I always say to people who criticize Christoph. You know, it's just bring it up again, but it's exactly what it is. You look at the guy; he's very successful. You find something you don't like about him, and then you go for it.
Yeah, but I can understand. I can understand it up to some point. If you're just playing poker recreationally and maybe you're a little bit bitter about losing, you just come up maybe with these things. Some years ago, I have said it way too many times. You know, about people sun running. Like in the end, who cares? You know, I might still say it occasionally that somebody sun runs, but not with the same intent and not with the same thoughts anymore. You know, that's a huge. Yeah, it's not a bitter sentiment anymore. Now I have a much easier time to, you know, to feel joy when somebody wins, or, you know, say, or even if I don't know the guy and I think he's like, you know, running good, I have a much different attitude to that. Whereas I understand, you know, where I was coming from years ago. So, you know, it's just, I guess, a little bit human when you see that somebody has it better in poker that you feel envious. And yeah,
of course. The thing is also the nature of the game, right? It's still to a certain degree gambling, and there's a lot of luck in it, and you can't fully quantify how good someone's decisions are. And if a lot of things come down to luck, and you dedicate a lot of time to it, and you're just not getting the results, because truth be told, you don't understand the game. You're not a winning player. You play quite badly, but you'll always remember that you lost aces to kings at one time, right? So what happens now is, all the time you lost was because you lost aces to kings and you're the unluckiest player in the world, right? And then you're looking for someone to attack. And you look for easy targets, and then you can find that guy, Christoph, for example. He's hiding in his hoodie. I don't like that. He's playing really slow. I don't like that either. I don't like his haircut. It's this Dominik guy. I don't like him either. And you're looking for all these things to attack in players, instead of like facing your own weaknesses and trying to get better. Because let's face it, the guys are better than you, you know, and you're attacking someone who takes a long time. It's ridiculous. Why don't you take longer time? Maybe if you took longer time, then you would win more money. I don't know. If it was that easy. So yeah, there's like this envy, and it's actually really tough because so much comes down to luck. So I can relate to those people, of course. But you're just gonna let it go, man. As you said, just let it go. You know, it's the game. Show some respect to the people. You know, show some respect, and also, just work on your own game. You know, why bring people down? It doesn't make sense.
On the other hand, though, I would say that respect has to be mutual, and what I think a lot of players fall into, especially also sometimes good players. I wouldn't say the best players, and I'm going to ask you that afterwards, but that they have this metric in poker towards VIPs that, you know, they're better than them because their metric is, you know, how good is this of a poker player? And they are judging on people just because that guy is like a really bad poker player, or it just plays for fun, you know? And then they are basically having that metric for the whole person or outside of it, and they cannot really get out of that tunnel. Would you say that, though, 80% of players in the high stakes don't have that metric?
I'd say 99.9999% of high stakes players don't have that metric at all. It's highly disrespectful, to judge someone's intelligence over poker. It's just crazy, The guy's new to the game. He probably did something right to make that money. And if he didn't, well, then he got his money from something. It doesn't even matter. Poker is just a game that you play, right? You compete in it. That's fun. One thing that really bothers me when I play like some of my lower stuff is all these people. There's like you're playing the World Series 1500, and I remember this a couple of years ago. Pretty funny story. I won't name a name because it's kind of embarrassing. I sat down at a table, low stakes buy-in. I don't really pay much attention. Brought my iPad. Was just sitting there. Some recreational player, beats a former world champion in a hand. I'm not going to say any names. That's why it's funny. He just says, and then he just turns to me and rolls his eyes. And I'm just like, what's wrong with you? Okay, I haven't talked a word to this world champion, but he saw a hand that was badly played by a recreational, and he felt the need to roll his eyes at another young guy who he thought was a professional to get approval. Like these guys, I don't even understand what to say to those people, You're playing poker on like a medium level, you're a good player. Don't humiliate the guys who, give you their money. They are the guys who you can beat. If they didn't play like this, you wouldn't have a job, Get that in your mind. Show some respect. And if you want to say something, make like a funny comment. Don't tap like the young guy on the shoulder and roll your eyes. The guy did it like 3 hands later, he did it again. And I said, what the fuck is wrong with you? I said, what do you want from me? I don't want to name names. But it's like an example like that. It's ridiculous.
The point. Makes the point, basically.
The guy ended up having a bunch of success and he probably grew up. But basically, I agree. You show respect to everyone and you just don't do that, If you like take a bad beat or something and you want to say something, at least make sure it's something funny that everyone can, make it a fun needle. Just don't completely disrespect the guy by rolling your eyes and like snickering about their play with some other young kid because they will understand you. That's not gonna.
And at least make the hand history a little bit funny. That's all it takes, I guess.
Yeah, just say something like, "Oh, I can't beat that," or like, "I didn't think you had that." I don't know. Just don't like, "Oh, I roll at the guy. Show me that cards," and it's like, I don't give a fuck. Or you have to just hurry up and play.
Yeah. It's very true that, but I guess it's a little bit of a form of development, and I think also giving people too hard of a time when you do that. I guess at the beginning of the careers, the more you have of that, because I think it takes you to realize that you do these things and takes a progression. And after years, I think if you still do it after a decade, like too much, and it's not so much understandable anymore. But I think the earlier you are in your career, the more you would do this. And
absolutely.
I thought that I was more cynical in high rake games than in normal rake games, because I realized what makes you really bitter in poker is when you play a game where, let's say, I also remember that because I have been sometimes really bitter on streamer and quite annoyed. It's like PLO 100 compared to PLO 500, PLO 1K. PLO 100 sometimes has players, like you would say that 70% is just clicking buttons, but you will still not win at a high win rate because 10 big blinds per 100 would get raked away. And that would make you feel really, really bad. Like, let's say you win like between 3 and 5 big blinds per 100. You're like, what the fuck? Like, these guys are literally clicking buttons. And then I would get bitter. Like, I realized that over time, like, this is really all about the rake. If I could simulate my graph without the rake, I would realize, I'm just getting all this money and I'm still getting money despite all this rake, but it's just so much less. And
I'm curious what you do about it, Like,
you can't do much. What you can do is you can go play live poker where your edge is 3 times as high, and then almost not have swings, even though you cannot run it twice sometimes. But I guess that's what you can do about it, or play
you're absolutely right. It's part. I'm so happy I'm not coming up through the mid stakes right now for exactly that reason. Players are really good, and as you said, the rake at 100 PLO is insane. So I was just genuinely curious, like, what's the way to go around this? Do you just try to play 200 and you table select, or
I think that's the way to go. Yeah, I think table selection is really important, and then also getting sites Rake back. Probably playing on shit sites. Let's get into that maybe a little bit. Like play on really like on PvP apps. Look that you don't get scammed. Play just in very soft games where you have the maximum security, where you have as little of money you have to give to some agent. Just manage your way through until you have a big enough bankroll where you can play other games, where you can potentially go into live poker where everything's soft when you get invited. Still,
PLO tournaments properly was my guess. If you can get
PLO tournaments are probably still very good. Yeah, I mean,
pretty good idea.
Yeah, because of the basically missing Rake after the initial buy-in, you can basically play a much better big blind strategy than most people. I think the big blind strategy alone could net you a lot of ROI already, just because of the pot odds you're getting, and most people don't understand that. At least all the recreationals, and then some of the even better players or the professionals might even make a lot of mistakes, like people with no limit hold'em background. You also play PLO, right?
I don't have enough time anymore. I can't. I find the game very fascinating. I wanted to get into heads up PLO mostly. Certainly I want to play more PLO tournaments in the future, but I just don't have time these days, and I would really like to dedicate more time to PLO because it's a good game. I believe this is still, if I was starting out grinding mid stakes, that's what I'm asking. I'd find a way to get through the mid stakes somehow playing PLO, because I believe that's a much more alive game, much better games. It's either PLO cash or tournaments. I think tournaments are still good also. But no limit hold'em, you do not want to play no limit hold'em cash for a living. It's not a valid plan, I want to say. So my PLO is just I try to play a little bit. I play some PLO tournaments online. I'm not that good. I'm a bit of a fun player, but I know how to play tournaments pretty well, and I kind of understand a little bit about PLO equities. And what I find is when I play PLO tournaments, that I think it's much more about playing tournaments than it is about playing OMA. And that's extremely helpful. So all my lack of knowledge in the game, I can make up for by my understanding of ICM and where to put the pressure on, and where to attack, sort of, because of the tournament dynamics, and where to sit back and wait and make like tight folds. So yeah, understanding all of those things actually, to me, it probably means that I'm just going to play PLO tournaments going forward. No PLO cash, because I just don't have the time to dedicate to it.
Perfect tournaments, yeah. And I think also your understanding of 20 big blind play, 10 to 15 big blind play, no limit will, with
absolutely
smaller bet sizings versus big blind, it will basically help you out so much in a PLO tournament as well. So I don't see any reason why that couldn't be a great idea. But yeah, cash 100 big blind, I think and also 250 big blind or 300, like bigger stack sizes. There's some preflop ranges for out there. They're actually fairly complex, especially in how they also interfere on flops. Then that's a whole other beast, and takes forever.
Don't have the time, man. I love that stuff. It's so interesting to me. I can't do it. I have W Coops on right now playing.
I think when you look at that stuff, I actually want to go back again and learn more about no-limit hold'em tournaments, because I realize I've fallen quite behind the curve the last 3 years. I haven't been playing much tournaments, PLO tournaments, but the no-limit hold'em tournaments, I've fallen behind so much. So I have to really step up my game so that I can play more no-limit hold'em tournaments again. I mean, next year there's the 25K in Barcelona. I'm pretty excited for that because I actually want to play it. It's going to be a super soft tournament. In fact, it's like 320 platinum pass winners. So I just have to, work on my game again, and I guess get into soft spots like that.
Barcelona, though, with the tax situation, it's not that appealing. Mostly for Germans, it's an issue. For French, I've heard. For the Dutch,
what about Austria? Living in Austria with a Swiss passport, would you say that's dangerous?
I suggest you contact an accountant before you go play that tournament.
Okay.
I think that's the right.
Thanks.
It's the right play. What I heard was that, and I don't know if this is the right output, but I believe an Austrian lawyer confirmed that to a good friend of mine. They said, as long as you don't pay taxes in your home country, they can come after you. That was pretty clear, so I sort of don't bother.
Also, you don't
Barcelona. I didn't go to Barcelona for that reason, which kind of hurts me. And that's also why you didn't see any of the Germans there this year, because we're all, pretty terrified of that. Because it actually is a pretty unfair system, you know? You can't deduct your swaps, and then they just straight up ask you for a third of your winnings, which you may or may not even have. So I'll stay the hell away from Spain. And thankfully, there's alternatives. I don't understand why Stars is having a 25k there. It just blows my mind that. But hey, PokerStars these days, you know?
Yeah, okay, that makes. I actually didn't know about that it was so extreme. I heard something, but I didn't know. Like, I basically play cash games in Barcelona, so I don't know much about the tournament scene. But I didn't know that they actually did this to everyone, like including people living in England. And
I personally don't know. I'm saying they could. I'm saying there've been people from all over Europe that they've been going after.
Yeah.
And if you're just going there, YOLOing it up, you probably shouldn't do that. You should just get it confirmed by an accountant that you are.
Okay.
That you won't be taxed. And if you will be taxed, then you gotta decide for yourself if it's worth the risk paying it. Are you gonna pay it? I don't know.
I guess
really,
yeah.
I guess like
the risk of like a 30% RI threat is just too high. I'm actually pretty careful about that.
I'd probably only come after you if you win big, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's the other side. But then there's still the WSOP main event and those things that they can.
Of course, you don't need to play Barcelona.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah, that's true. Like if that's really the thing, and I cannot find a solution for that, then it makes no sense. Other than like just winning the entry straight up in like a satellite.
Right.
You know, there might be some promotional things, but other than that, I guess if that's true, then yeah. I mean, if you mention it,
this is pretty
scared. And I mean, there's enough in Barcelona already in the cash games with this whole run it twice scam that Ansky was scammed for 20k. And
I remember
that is just so much trouble that you can get in. That's extra stuff. So when it comes to taxes in poker, it's also an interesting topic. Would you say that poker is a form of double taxation when people get taxed, or is it not?
On poker winnings? Yeah, yes. I believe so.
You believe it's double taxation?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think gambling winnings should be taxed. If they are taxed, then there needs to be a very fair system for it in place, right? But no country has a system for it in place, as far as I know. I think even the US is the only place where it's sort of in order where you can deduct everything. But I think in like Germany or something, you can't deduct anything. It's a complete mess, basically.
Actually, it's the same. I have the same opinion, but I realized I made like a thread 4 years ago in 2+2, and I realized, wow, these guys are all from a different planet, because everyone was like, no, this is not double taxation. Rake is something completely different. You know, if the operator or the operator gets taxed, that's not tax. That's something else. And then
of course that's tax.
Yeah. I always was like looking at poker that way. That, you know, I think it's not a zero-sum game anymore. It shouldn't be. I think it's fair that there is a tax on poker. You know, we can't let 50% of all poker players win at poker. You know, this is also, it doesn't make any sense, right? I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't have like a free-for-all and the whole world playing poker, you know, gambling for money and have nothing taken out of it. But I think as soon as the operator and the rake is like already high in Europe, you know, as soon as they take them out of money and they give it to the government, I think the government should be fine. Just, you know, let the players go. But of course, you cannot do nothing about it. The governments, they want more. They want more and more. And that's just the way it is.
The game's already like super hard to beat, you know. If you had another source in there that wants their cut, it's not going to work. That's why most of the American tournament guys are just completely broke. Not because they're bad players, it's because they have to pay so much in tax. Right. Okay. I couldn't do this if I was paying tax on my winnings. This is crazy.
Makes no sense to me either to do this as an American citizen, to try to play tournament poker for a living. There's so much variance in it. And then even if you're on the good side, then you end up paying 20-30% of taxes, sometimes 40% if you're living in the wrong state. It just doesn't make any sense to me, and how these people do it. I think it's like overestimating themselves and just not doing the math right, and it just doesn't make sense. So you have to live in a country like UK. Austria is still fine. Like, I still don't know. Like, I've never talked with a good lawyer who knows the system well. Like, most lawyers probably don't know anyway, like unless you have like a really good specialist. But all I know is, so far, people are not getting taxed. Like, I haven't heard of a guy, a friend. So I'm fine for now. And I guess if that changes, I'm going to UK and I'm out of here.
I'm not an expert on Austria, but I'm glad that in the UK it's 100% tax-free, and I kind of like it here. So life's good. I'd be careful in Austria.
What?
I would be careful in Austria. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess.
Really worth asking a specialist and just getting it sorted out once and for all.
I mean, I haven't won like that much money. Like, I've won some money, but like, it's not like threatening if they made up some ridiculous number or something. But
like, again, this is the thing though, right? If someone doesn't like you and they report you to the authorities and whatnot, doesn't matter how much you won.
Yeah, but I'm not a tournament player. I've won so it's I'm pretty safe when it comes to that, I think. But if I play tournaments, I will probably be a lot more cautious, I guess, just because of the situation. But I already moved out of Switzerland, so in Switzerland, it was kind of that, you pay some tax as well, and it was just not possible, and higher cost of living as well. So not really the way you want to go. By the way, cost of living is also an interesting topic. Like, how do you, like, you probably have a pretty high bill per year, but I mean, you're making a lot of money playing poker, but how could you tell the audience a little bit about, where you are willing to put out a lot of money for hotels and restaurants, and where you need it up? Where do you draw the line? Because I know some people are ballers out there. They just put out so much money, but some of them are also trying to economize a little bit. What's your take on it?
I love food. It's probably my favorite thing in the world. When it comes to food, I just burn money like crazy. I love everything. Been to Japan multiple times, eaten at the best places. I love that. Anything else? It depends. Hotels, sometimes for a special occasion, I will book a nice hotel. Yeah, of course. I'm fortunate enough to where I've made enough money where I can afford this every once in a while, and it's okay. But in terms of other expenses, I live in a pretty reasonable place. Don't pay too much in rent. I don't own a car. I'm very big on collecting air miles, which is the main reason why I pretty much never have to fly economy. So that's nice. But yeah, I obviously do also spend way more money than I should. But I mean, I'm fortunate enough to have a few sources of income, thankfully, as well as running good at poker. And yeah, I just probably shouldn't follow my financial advice in that regard too much, because I'm a little bit crazy when it comes to spending money on things I enjoy. I'm fine. Not too crazy.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a pretty wide spectrum, and I've probably spent a lot of time on like gym memberships, and just to because I pretty much sit all day in front of the computer or in casinos, so at least I have to do something.
That is smart.
Having a nice gym, and also food I like, but then there's obviously also some times where I think it gets through the roof in Vegas with your choices and stuff. So I'm probably more on the nittier side when it comes to that, but also all in good reason. It's like you should always look within your bankroll, I think. And see what's possible. What?
I have an opportunity to eat at the best restaurant in the world. I'm booking the next flight out. So what I'm saying is actually, if you enjoy it, and it's an occasional treat for you, then hey, go for it.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely.
In Vegas, especially, there's so many good restaurants. And
what's your favorite? What's your top 3 in Vegas?
In Vegas, Partage, number 1, let's say. And then just for 3, it's just too difficult. I like La Mai for Thai food, really good place. Next door, there's another place that I really like. It's called Sparrow and Wolf. also really, really good. Then there's DTO, Tapas Bar, really, really good place. Those would be the places we mostly frequent because they're also open. They're all open late night, which is really cool. You can play a tournament and then have a meal at 1 a.m. in all these places. Yeah. Trying to think what else is as I frequent a lot. Yeah, those will be the most popular for sure.
Okay. And what about other places you've been to? Like where you said Japan, you like sushi and just Japanese food. And,
Love it. Yeah.
That's the best.
Yeah, I've been to some of the good ones, and I haven't been to some of the other really good ones I want to go to. This. If anyone's going to Japan and needs advice where to eat, I'm the guy. But also, it's not just the high-end food there. There's also just a bowl of ramen in Japan. It's just so good.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, ramen is actually one of the foods that I really enjoy, and it's very cheap. Everywhere in the world you go with ramen, is just a good bowl of ramen is super tasty. And if you get it the right way, you'll know what I mean. If you get it, I don't know. I don't eat ramen at home, but I love it in Vegas, and I really like it also in Japan. It's fantastic. But yeah, it's like one of those things that if they're not good, then you're like, so this is okay, but I don't get the hype. But you have something really good, then you're like, man, this is awesome. And the same with sushi as well.
Awesome, good. So yeah, I mean, poker and traveling, I think is a huge topic, especially if you're like new into this. I think making a plan around it for live poker. Yeah, people could be really surprised about like what stuff costs and what the bottom line will be. And you have to play reasonable stakes, I think, for live poker. It's really pretty dangerous, I think, to play anything below 5-10. I mean, you can. It's still working, I think. Like if you play 2-5 and 5-5, those weird, depending on the rakes, on the structure, it's okay. It can work, but yeah, most people don't realize like how big your edge has to be in order to make a living, and you have to economize a lot, I think, if you want to play those games and not play higher instead.
Yeah, so it's tough. Obviously, I recognize how fortunate I am to that. I don't really have to worry about that.
Do you would you compare like what do you think are these days the best 2K to 10K buy-in tournaments? Like EPTs and stuff.
Anything you can play. 10Ks are too high; they get too tough.
Mm-hmm.
This is very true. In Europe, certainly the 10K main events, insanely tough. Full of grinders, stables that put their horses in. It's not an attractive buy-in level for recreational. Very simply put, that's where it gets very tough. World Series Europe may or may not be good. The main event, I don't have a clear opinion on it. Should be all right. Other tournaments that are good. Barcelona, obviously, fantastic. Best 5K of the year. Rake is probably going to be all right too. In Europe, what else? You can pretty much, if you're playing like the lower stakes buy-ins, you can travel to like a WPT or something. There's a WPT coming up.
But what RIs do you have any RI estimates, like what is possible, like for someone like you, and then for someone who's just good, decent?
Just give you the truth. I'd just be guessing.
Okay, yeah, but having a guess, you don't know.
You shouldn't worry about that sort of stuff. I think it just distracts you from the main goal, which is to show up and play with poker, right? If there's like a WPT in, I don't know, Nottingham is the first one that comes to mind. That's going to be good, whatever, And there's like one at Kings that's going to be good, or lower stakes buy-ins, even like a WPT deep stack. There's no way that tournament isn't good. Put it this way, they need a lot of players, and there's just quite frankly not that many good players, and a lot of the elite is just not going to bother showing up. I think what a lot of people don't understand about RIs is so much gets taken out by the top guys, and people don't realize it. People are like, oh, like this, like all these recs take out the money, but I think the guys at the top take out far more than their fair share, especially later when the stakes get really high and there's a lot of ICM considerations. So that's where like a really good player can take a lot of advantage of a weaker player. So I would actually say that an RI for the true elite in like one of those is a lot higher than people think. And I would argue that ROI for like a decent, solid player is quite a lot lower than most people think. Maybe like plus a couple percent. But that's of course only assuming the top players show up, right? If the top players don't show up, then suddenly someone else is the best in the field and everyone gets a lot more money. So I'm just saying is you should play the ones where the elite pros don't show up, which is like it's the 3K sort of buy-in range.
So what you're saying is you should try to show up and be the best in that field and potentially even skip the higher buy-ins for some people, because if you're one of the best in the field, then all of a sudden your ROI is through the roof. And whereas, I think I also met some people in cash games that they're specifically on the buy-in level, what they're grinding, they can beat that limit. They're like almost specialized in that. But then if they would move up higher, then they would run into troubles because of the better players in there. But then on their limit, they're like comfortable and they're actually pretty decent on that limit compared to others. And they understand the dynamics and just the meta game behind it. And then they're going to be fine. But then when they would move out of it, then they would be a little bit uncomfortable, but would have to get better, basically. I think that's a lot.
Of course, the games get tougher as you move up. And I think far too many people have far too much ego. They're just like, I need to play this 10K. And then they played the first 10K, and now they suddenly think they need to play every single 10K.
Yeah.
Then they like play their 10K with like 2-3% ROI, maybe -2. Does it really matter? No, it doesn't, because they should be, again, playing something else where they have a higher ROI. It's just just the way it is, that people just think they need to play the highest stakes that's available to them because they think they have an edge. Well, it's not like that, and I think people would be way better off sticking to the lower stakes where they make money for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that could be pretty helpful as a tip for a lot of people, so that stay within your games where you can just win a lot and basically increase your bankroll. And what's the highest you would personally take in percent, or maybe you have taken more than that? I know that, for example, there's all this debate about the 2%, like Fedor said something like, not too much over 2%, but then maybe he has sometimes taken that shot a little bit over 2%. How high will you go? What?
I'm taking a few far too big shots. Namely one drop, because the truth is one drop you had to pay a $30,000 deposit, which was a complete shit show, but that's not the point. I ended up investing more than 6 figures in one drop, which in hindsight was pretty stupid. I also invested a lot in some of the earlier Tritons, which I think was fine, pretty smart, actually. Yeah, but in general, I just try to invest around like 25K, 50K maybe, if it's really good.
Just to have a big enough piece and then something that makes sense within bankroll management. Yeah.
I also have a couple of swaps, so I want to swap.
That smooths out variance quite a bit, right? I mean, if you have some swaps, I mean.
Yeah, certainly.
Should be pretty good.
I've been getting saved, and I've saved many of my fellow.
Okay. Some sun running in this swaps.
Yeah.
That's cool. You mentioned also ego as one of your enemies. Do you know the book Ego is Your Enemy? Have you heard about it?
No.
I just read it like some months ago. It's been pretty interesting. A lot of the things that I recognize within poker, within myself, especially the past, and then trying to lessen that ego that is within you is pretty important skill set to have, and working on that. So what are your favorite books, or what of the books are also in terms of learning something maybe outside of poker? What have you?
I'm not big on books. I really wish I had more time to read. I'll be honest, this app and like playing WCoop now just takes up way too much of my time.
Okay.
Maybe if it all comes down, I'll have some time to dedicate to books, but I've really been grinding the circuit full time, and developing an app has just been so much that mostly when I'm done, I just want to do something where I just sleep, hang out with my girlfriend, and get ready to do it all over again the next day.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, do you is there a time where your girlfriend thinks that you don't have enough time, and this is like something like Is there one, managing a relationship with poker? I think I gotta give you props on that.
It's not always
easy.
It's easy because she understands. Yeah, she plays a little bit herself. I've been teaching her, but no, she understands the game, which is helpful. She understands that when I have to put in the hours, I need to put in the hours. She understands that wouldn't have any money if I didn't put in the hours. It's pretty simple. Yeah, that's always it helps because if you're successful, a lot of those things just take care of themselves because she doesn't need to question me. It's not that I put in the hours and then we're struggling to put food on the table because money always takes care of those things for you. I find if she starts saying, "Oh, you don't have enough time for me," then I would just say, "Well, how else am I gonna make money? Because this is the game, and if you don't grind hard at the game, then it's not gonna work. If you don't put in the hours, the game will pass you by. If you don't grind, certainly in tournaments, if you don't put in the volume, then you're gonna have a losing year. So that doesn't work either. And now that I've also taken on the project of the app on the side, that's a little bit more difficult because I'm on my phone a lot already, and now with all the questions that come in, I'm pretty much on my phone 24/7. An understanding of this too because she sees the potential. She knows what sort of vision we have for the app. So yeah, she thinks it's a good idea.
For support.
Yeah, for the support. Yeah, she's very supportive. So that's cool.
It's awesome. I mean, also that but when you say 24/7, would you say that at some point it gets a little bit too much with the phone? Do you sense any forms of addiction and like?
Ever since it's been released, I can't stop refreshing all the numbers and everything because I'm really addicted to that stuff. Yeah, there's like something goes on in Discord. I need to, you can see this. I'm looking down. That's where my phone is. So someone keeps messaging me. Someone tries to call me. It's been a lot of that, which I can only imagine for the next month is going to be exactly like this because we have so much coming up. It's just that's what it is. I can't turn off my phone and not be responsive because it doesn't work like this. I think people need to be in touch with me right now, and maybe in the future.
Have you thought about hiring some people who can answer questions?
Yeah, of course, we have someone to do that.
Yeah, so why? I mean, you can have like a time window where you cut yourself off. What?
Yeah. At night when everyone goes to sleep, I get private time. I get time to play. But yeah, we have someone managing this, and they do a good job. But I still need to be around for to talk to the developers, to make sure our data is good. If like someone reports a bug, then I try to take as much work off the developers so they can focus on their important job, and I just try to take the work off them. If someone reports a bug or something, I have to make sure it's a real bug, and then I send it to them. So I do all of those things as well. So I also play a lot of poker still. W Coop going on.
Yeah, a lot of work.
I'm not complaining too much. It's fun. For now, it's fun.
Okay, that's cool. As long as it doesn't get too much, and you do feel like you're still enjoying that type of work, then I think it's totally cool. But yeah,
people have been super cool. Feedback's been amazing. People are super into the app. So as long as they're positive and they don't fucking come in and say 1-star review because the free version didn't give me enough features, that's kind of where I get a little bit agitated.
Yeah.
But no, people have been super awesome, nice, friendly, and I can't thank everyone enough for support. Yeah. Cool.
And again, if you're just tuning in now, that is DTO Poker, Dom's new project, a GTO tool where you can work on your poker game, tournament poker 20 and 30 big blinds. It's going to be in the description below afterwards. And I also want to give you guys now in the chat the option to maybe ask also one of the last questions here in the podcast. So I know a couple of people have been watching here for a bit, and if you're there, maybe you want to ask something that I've forgotten in the podcast. Maybe I've been here for a bit longer, but now it will be the time to do so. Otherwise, I get a couple of more questions in myself.
All right. I got about half an hour, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's going to be totally fine. I think we could go a little bit more into the skill set, maybe maybe that's been too much. I don't know. But it's always also a more personal interest. And we talked a lot about ego, or not ego, but like the skills. You just mentioned ego, that a lot of the high stakes players, they have better metrics for how they label other players, and that they understand how the game is working. And they study a lot, right? That's I think one of them.
Hang on there 1 minute.
Yeah, just giving you a second. I have a W coupe day too. I'm just trying to make sure I didn't fuck the time up, but should be all okay. Yeah, that didn't make sure that nothing like that is wrong. Exactly. It's probably 7 p.m. or something, right?
Yeah. It's just that I'm on UK time, so I'm super paranoid about that stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I've once missed a day 2 500 buying. Was one of my bigger buys.
I slept on day 2 of 100K. That wasn't fun.
You slept in?
Yeah, I slept in.
Oh,
I woke up half an hour after it started.
Okay. And then you get a lot of messages on your phone.
Actually, 0 messages. Fucking hell.
Oh, nobody was so nice. Oh, Dominik is not here today. Let's keep him sleeping.
Actually, no, but it's like one of the first 100Ks I played, and there was no one there really. That was
okay. Of course. Tobias is asking how many hours of grinding, how many hours of studying in 1 week. Like, what's the minimum study you would say you'd have to have in PO and with apps that are related to it?
You just try. The way I do it, and who knows if that's perfect. I just try to do as much as I can. Reviewing hands is always a good way to do some very, very effective studying. So, you don't need to sit down and run sims, which can be very exhausting. You could just sit down and just run a couple hands. You know what I'm saying? It's, you have a hand that you played, and then afterwards you go to the solver and look up if you played that. That's sort of like an easy, digestive way to study, right? I personally find that I can't sit in front of a solver for too long, otherwise I get really, really bored. But yeah,
I would have thought it was different for you. It's just like go.
I get bored too. I still do it. I didn't say I didn't do it. I was saying.
But yeah, after some time, after some hours, maybe.
It's tough.
But then also, what you like systematically for learning, you will be jumping a lot between spots. One time you have a 3-bet pot and a single raise pot and this position. But you would always say that it's important that when you go into the spot that you go into depth, because a lot of people, I think, maybe you agree with that what they do is they go into the hand way too much. They look, did I play my hand correctly? But then what they not try to do is trying to understand the range versus range interaction and
of course.
Try to derivate something from that.
That's so much more difficult, right? If you do this all the time, I find that if you look at the hand, though, you get a repetition there. You can just, okay, like this hand, plus you open it up, and then you can always see like this hand is played like this hand is played like this. I just find that if you take a hand that you play and you're not sure about, I find it very reassuring. It helps your confidence. And maybe it doesn't help your confidence. Maybe it just crushes your confidence. And you learn that you played your hand absolutely terrible. I find that immediate feedback is very important to teach people how to play correctly. Otherwise, you can just use them there. This is fine. I used this hand. That was wrong. That's okay. But
that's also a very interesting point I want to follow up on is the confidence thing. I know that especially in PLO, some people, they have started using solvers. They got a lot more knowledgeable, but then even though they had still a pretty decent win rate, their confidence got shattered. I don't know for whatever reason, but there's probably been multiple ones. But like the solver, like being confronted with the complexity of that, maybe could have result in you having a confidence loss as well, not just a confidence boost.
Yeah.
But also the other way, that you lose your confidence because you realize, well, you're actually so much behind what's optimal, but it could be still good enough. Jesus, this fly has been annoying me for like half an hour.
But that's a good thing, actually. If you learn that you are actually making a bunch of mistakes all over the place, well, maybe that's a place to start learning. I've certainly found that when people were on the app playing, they would consistently make mistakes, like good high stakes professionals, and they would just be like, I don't understand why is this a mistake? Why this is a mistake? And I said, well, now you found something to study. So confidence doesn't have to be a good thing, right? If you're like super confident, but you're making mistakes all over the place, and like your world-class opponents know that, you should probably figure out what your mistakes are, because otherwise they'll keep taking advantage of you all the time, unless you fix those mistakes. But if you have no one to tell you what your mistakes are, you just be, you know.
How would you say though in live poker, does that, so many people, do you think they're completely wrong? There's like, confidence is so big, like what are you trying to project? But what I see in live poker a lot is, especially in cash games, I give people way too much credit. Like I sit down in a live poker game, I look at all these young players, and like at first, well, these are probably all Rakes and they probably know this and this. No. And then after like 2 hours, I see this guy, they all do like some weird shit. And like, what have I been thinking at first? Like I totally have done a lot of projecting. Yeah.
Why do you think they're good? Well, they are probably very confident in the game. They think that everything they do is right. You know what I'm saying? So if you're that confident, that's not good either. You know? So you need some humility in your game, and accept that you're not perfect, which I think is a pretty good trait. But what I was going to say is that if you are consistently within the solver outputs in your plays, that's important. I think that's that helps. Because then you've earned the confidence. You're not getting your confidence from beating completely terrible players. You're getting your confidence from performing at like a super high level, which is higher than that most humans are capable of. So I think that's something you can base your confidence on. But basing your confidence on beating NL 200, beating NL, whatever 200 live, that shouldn't give you a reason to be super confident in your game, because really all you're doing is taking money from idiots, poker idiots. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, we've talked about the metric. We don't mean actual. Yeah. That's also something. I always have to clarify as well.
Actually, idiots, though, to be fair, at 200. You know what I mean?
They could be, but yeah. But we always have to really make it very specific. That
someone gets offended. I know.
Yeah. Some people get offended if you do it. I curse around quite a bit, so it's on stream. So people have to get used to that sometimes. And I actually don't mean it. Like I would not offend anyone. Actually, in live poker, I'm really nice to people. Like people have sometimes ask me, well, what about the berating? Like sometimes when I stream, I berate like some online players, but I don't really mean it. It's like whatever. I don't really know what else to say when I'm on stream. What else am I
obviously it's for the stream. I gotta play it up.
Huh?
You gotta play it up a little bit for the stream.
Yeah, sometimes I do that. Yeah, sometimes it is authentic, and sometimes I just do it a little over the notch. And, yeah. But I would never do it in live poker. Like, what's the point about it? It's just,
You look like an idiot if you do that.
Yeah, and berating is pretty bad for the game. By the way, does the app DTO, do you give at least the parameters? Like if somebody, let's say, played on DTO poker and you say, look, you have the bet sizes, right? But would you give like the pre-flop ranges so that somebody would want to do it in POs? You could rerun the sim, and
of course.
Okay.
Exact frequencies are going to be released for the next tier, because we honestly think this is a bit confusing for a $10 for most $10 customers. The truth be told, why would someone need to know if they play this end 25% of the time, for example? We find that's a little bit of unnecessary information, so we try to simplify it for the low tier. And the next tier is going to feature all the frequencies and stuff, so everyone can run their own sims. Okay. And we're going to show exact frequencies on which lines get taken as well. So that's also something people can use to verify our stuff.
Awesome. Then where will you place DTO poker app with so many trading apps out there? You sound like an honest person.
Well, thanks.
That is a question. So what's the question exactly? Where will you place?
I would rate DTO among other poker coaching.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, this is going to be very strange. What other poker coaching apps are out there?
I don't know, like Snow.
There's Poker Snowy, which is garbage. There's like Poker Fighter or something, which is complete garbage. There's if you can tell me another poker coaching app I should be comparing this to.
Well, I showed Marcus PLO Visions. Shout out to Rulas here. He is our Matthias. He has made PLO Visions. Have you seen PLO Visions?
No, let me look that up or something. What does
I
it do?
just showed it to Matthias. It's a PLO app where you also have a lot of sims run in the background, and then you can play the flop strategy. I think it would be worth looking at it. Flop and some turns as well.
PLO Visions. Flop and some turns. So it's sort of like what we're doing.
Yeah, actually, it basically can find out whether you do c-bet or not to c-bet, and then how to continue versus check raise, and so on and so forth.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so you also have sometimes the choice
between. If this is done well, I obviously highly recommend it.
2 bet sizes, but yeah, that's just like something to compare.
No, that's exactly what you want.
I wonder, like, has Marcus been drinking too much beer in Vegas? Because I mentioned the program to him, and he should show it maybe to you as well. Because I showed him, look, this is the app. You could maybe pick up a few things.
No.
Everyone was drinking beer there. Maybe hasn't consciously.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's just something to compare it with, basically. But I can show you also after the stream real quick with you know.
I kind of have to hop in the W Cuba now. I'm kind of like gonna get into it.
Okay. But I mean, yeah, or whatever.
That's
yeah, if you want to see
Monker, I'd assume, yeah.
It's Monker, yeah, exactly.
Monker.
Yeah, but that's like a way to learn about PLO. I think the best way next to pre-flop, where you go either to Monker. I have a couple of programs for that.
What's the price? Is that already out?
They actually did a bit. It's I think $99 a month, and it's more at a different. But PLO is also the market is much smaller. I think the pricing is pretty much on point.
Interesting. I'm actually
what it's providing
try it out for free. Very interesting. No, cool. I mean, I'm in favor of this stuff. I know it's pretty similar to what we're doing. So it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, it is a similar program, and for me, for No Limit Hold'em, maybe DT Poker is something I will use quite a lot as well in the future if I go back to tournaments, especially because I've been basically also too busy with PLO and other things in life that I couldn't really. That's always been a struggle of mine because I've learned the mixed games a little bit. I've learned PLO, No Limit Hold'em tournaments. I've basically never really specialized that much, and now being specialized in PLO, I know I'm close to some really good limit, especially in live poker because everything is so much easier. But then having that no limit by the side and trying to figure out, okay, how can I get better there? You have to run so many sims yourself, but then if they're already there, it's awesome because you can learn so much faster. Not always having to do that.
We agree that tournaments are a good way to make money, right? Like tournaments are super soft.
Yes, I would say so.
Why would you not dedicate more time to tournaments as well as PLO cash, which is the other good way to make money? Because we talked earlier about what's a good game, and I would say, well, PLO and tournaments, and if you put them together, PLO tournaments, of course.
Yeah,
this is like where you want. This is where you want to put your time. If someone asks me where to make money, those are the two games I'd point them at. Is there a reason?
Certainly not NL cash online, even though it would be super interesting. Yeah, it would be interesting, but it wouldn't be what I want to play. I would still want to be good at no limit cash though, and like online, it would be like a training tool where I play like 100K hands maybe in a short amount of time, so I get refreshed and then use them. Yeah, but only for live poker cash, because sometimes you might have a 25-50 game for whatever reason, and then it might be really soft because it's televised.
Isn't there more PLO than no limit at high stakes?
Well, right now, I don't know if you follow that kind of content, but there's always these Life of the Bike shows and those American shows, Poker Night in America, and I mean, if you somehow then end up getting into a lineup there and it's rather soft, it's good to be able to play no limit. Yeah, I guess.
You can make that argument to be good at any game, though.
That's true. Like to be versatile, and
I still think most is PLO and tournaments.
Yeah, but I think like very few people can do like almost everything. I think like True Teller or some people like that are just insanely good because they can play Deuce to 7 and all these other games and such a high level.
That is insane. I don't understand.
Yeah. Have you played with True Teller much?
No.
Or not really?
Less than
Okay. But he sometimes plays live poker as well, right?
Yeah, we've never been on my table.
Okay. Yeah, these guys are really interesting that they're like, what do you think about, now Linus also coming into the scene and I mean, it's pretty awesome to see that now these online players, being in a live setting and seeing them, perform at the highest levels there, of course, as well. Because how could it be different?
But
they're basically showing what's up.
It doesn't help either if those guys show up and the businessmen go away.
I mean, obviously, that's not all. Yeah,
it makes the game like so much worse again. Like, oh, great, more pros.
I mean, of course, that's not awesome for like the game quality, but I think it's nice to see also that how that hard work paid off. I think from that perspective.
Yeah,
I think it's still
they're really good players. Fun playing against them, but as I was saying.
Yeah, but what can you do in the end? These games, that's going to be the development of poker. Better players are going to come out, and we talked about it earlier. Just be frowning upon good poker play and trying to diminish that and just make it a bad quality.
Everyone's welcome to play. I'm cool with that. I'm just saying. You asked me what I think about it. I say obviously I'm not happy.
Okay, of course.
Well, Rex. Yeah. Oh, they play well. Great.
Great. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, of course, if it's directly affecting you, can't be happy, of course.
In a way, they're too late anyway.
Yeah, because the golden days are over.
They're too late. Put it that way. Very simple.
Okay. So many good games like a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's just a progression. Do you think like a game could come up other than No Limit and PLO, where it's like, I mean, short deck is probably not going to be it. I mean, let's listen to my take, but. Do you think some new game could emerge? I mean, it could. We don't know, but would you give anything a shot?
I think people just like playing No Limit Hold'em. People just like playing PLO. New game, it's not going to do anything either. I think. I just don't see it. But the game's alive and well. Mid-stakes No Limit tournaments are bigger than ever. PLO, cash is alive and well. It's just at the high stakes that we're struggling with. We're trying short deck.
Getting into action.
Yeah. I mean, the truth is that except for the Triton events, I think the high rollers are also sort of dying down, which is kind of sad. World Series is still good, obviously, but I don't think a new game is going to change anything. I think what happened is that a lot of the business guys, they got in those games, they obviously didn't win, or they ended up winning and then lost all their money. Now they're looking for excuses why they're losing. Blame the solvers, they blame the hoodies, and we're back to that conversation again. But truth be told, they don't put up their money anymore, so why would we care? If someone comes in and says, "Oh, this is why I'm not playing anymore," that's bullshit, because the truth is they're not playing anymore because they've been losing, and they're just looking for excuses. Is there anything we can do to change it? Well, probably not, because even if we listen to them, like a huge debate was re-entries. Let's limit re-entries. If we limit re-entries, then I'll play all the high rollers again. Okay, whatever. We'll limit the re-entries. It's completely whatever. The guy's talking bullshit anyway. Then they come back, they play 2 tournaments, they lose, then they find something else to complain about. It's actually just really difficult for a recreational to stick around at these stakes, because they were,
there's so much behind.
If they don't win, they don't want to play anymore. And it's kind of hard to win.
Well, what about if those recreationals actually got something? Like, a lot of the times, would you give them something at least? Because a lot of the guys, what I hear is from some recreational players, I don't want to generalize too much, but they say, I actually just want to learn something too. Like, give me something. I mean, don't try to hide every single piece. Like, they just want to learn and get better too. So do you give them something, or do you just try to retain every single edge you have on them?
Well, I think that people overestimate that. People don't know how a recreational thinks, and then it's always like, oh, he doesn't play because of this, or he doesn't play because of that. No, the truth is he doesn't play because he's been losing and he's making up excuses. And hey, he's going to blame someone, something, and whatnot. I'll show cards sometimes because it's fun. I'm like I always show a card that can either be a bluff or value every single time I do it. And I don't know, is that fun? No, I do it because I enjoy it, not to keep someone sticking around. I don't show cards to keep a sucker sticking around, because that's not me. That's not what I do. If I do that, then I'd be running a private game. It's just, I don't know. I think people, for the most part, who play those games, I always thought they come and play, and they like the competition of playing against the best. They know they're sort of an underdog, and they can learn from them by playing. And they have enough money to burn, put it that way. But then there's also another group of guys who, for some reason, think they deserve to win when playing against a bunch of kids who dedicated 12 years of their life to studying this game, when all they do is play occasionally. You don't deserve to beat anyone who's dedicated 12 years of their life at something. They're obviously better than you, and you don't need to make an excuse for it, because there's no shame. But I find a lot of people do see that shame, and they think they deserve to win if only it wasn't unlimited re-entry or some other nonsense they come up with, or if there wasn't big blind ante or whatever. The truth is, there's so much noise around this that we should just ignore, because those guys won't come back anyway, and we shouldn't try to cater to those guys.
What do we think about these field players who are saying fuck GTO and fuck servers?
First of all, shout out to Jabran, and second of all, fuck those guys. Bring them on.
Oh, do you know Jabran? Oh yeah, Jabran mentioned something. Yeah, because that he knows you as well.
Yeah, I know. Then just to the question. These guys are mostly, but they're either wrong or they're lying to you. Put it that way. If I was smart, I said this earlier. If I was smarter, I wouldn't have told anyone I study solvers. I would have told everyone that I'm Bitcoin rich and I just play for fun. But it's not what I do. I'm just honest. So, yeah, those guys. If they try to sell you something, run away very far. Don't buy.
Wait. If somebody says masterclass, read live poker pros like a boss, please buy, then you're saying that's not good?
Yeah, run away from this. If the guy says to you solvers are bullshit and he tries to sell you a coaching project, just run away. Or just run away.
Okay, but life rates. There's some life rates.
Bro, I have my intuition. Life rates are real, but I have my intuition. My intuition tells me to do this. I'm like, you're a fucking idiot.
That's something completely different.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people out there that try to make money off you by selling you a product that, as I said it before and I'll say it again, it just sounds better than it is, right? If someone is trying to give you the magic key to being successful at poker, and he's going after it a completely different angle, I want to say Doug does great stuff, and he's all about the GTO and it being good and stuff, and that's good. And then someone else comes in and is just completely trying to sell his stuff to people who don't believe Doug just to make a quick buck of them. It's kind of obvious what is going on here. The guy's just trying to sell shit to people who don't know any better. Is there anything we can do to control it? No. Should you buy their stuff? Almost definitely not. So,
yeah, no fire shots at individuals here.
You can figure out who I was talking about.
Yeah, I guess. There you have it, guys. That was not surprising, of course, because GTO-based tools, it's the way to go. It's not all the way. But in the end, what I also figured out is, and I've been speaking to some players, the other thing, not the intuition thing, or I feel like doing this, but more that some live poker players, I give them a lot of credit for being just a good live poker player. For example, for having the capacity to sit for a freaking 12 hours at a poker table and being really ready in the 12th hour and having the same energy up at that point. For just basically being able to be focused and look at all the other players around the table for a long time and just observe and see who might have I'll certainly pick up some tells or some inconsistencies, I would rather call them, in people's behavior. And I think that's a big skill set, and you can't talk their way out of it. I think it's also not what do you think about Ensan's win? I think Ensan is a great example of course, a little bit survivorship bias. I think that cannot be talked away, but he does a lot of great stuff. I think in some cases where it's just also a lot of live poker stuff, I think
I'm not familiar enough with his game.
Yeah.
I actually think he played pretty well on the final table. His hands were reasonable. He's also a better poker player than anyone gives him credit for. It's just because he's much better poker player than anyone gives him credit for, from a technical perspective. Much better. Like he's pretty decent. And also he's big on live reads. It's a lot of experience.
Exactly that. I think he's the perfect example of a mixing. Like he hasn't done the same stuff, but
in the main event, yeah.
What?
I would have bought his action in the main event at pretty decent markup, certainly.
There's a couple of players like that around, which you definitely are these outliers who pick up also these other skills than the solo. So I'm not like pure say, but in the end, I think doing the work is going to be the most important thing, and you cannot just hope to be like them. I think that's a little bit of the thing. You cannot hope to pick up these alternative skills, which also could make you a pretty good player. Because chances are you're not. Like your only good chances in poker, I think, are to do the work.
Exactly. You can't just hope to you can't just hope to be a good player and bink the main event, because that's honestly what just happened there. Ensign's a good player, and he won the main event. It could have been random NL 200 grinder winning the main event. Could have happened. Yeah, it's not. It's not impossible. Certainly, anyone who sits down can win, and the better you are, the higher your chances are.
Yeah, pretty simple as that.
Yeah, just be a good player.
Maybe last question. I think there's nothing more in the chat. How do you how do you kept healthy throughout all these years? Like in poker, do you think it is a tough thing to do? Yeah.
How do you mean that?
I think poker can be pretty unhealthy. Circadian rhythm, like sometimes being up late because of W cube and everything. Sure. Like, I've struggled quite a bit with it. What?
Okay, my sleeping schedule is the worst. I try to eat fairly reasonable, although, to be honest, I had some ice cream yesterday. But it's the W cube grind, whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I just try to not go crazy, not eat too much candy, and I get a lot of sleep. I'm grateful that I don't have to wake up early in the morning after doing all these silly long sessions. If you're looking for like top workout advice, I suggest you bring on literally anyone else. Yeah, I'm fortunate enough that I haven't had any health issues in my life. Plus, also I'm doing the entire podcast standing. I heard that's good.
Standing desk is pretty good. I haven't used it for a while. I have a standing desk, but I'm not using it often enough. It's like kind of a habit thing, but I should do it more often. It's pretty good.
I can't wait to get down and grind some W cube though. So.
What? You cannot do it all the time, right?
Wait to grind. I have 20 minutes. But no, all I'm saying is like it's starting to get tough to just stand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So who do you think should be my next guest on the Poker Player podcast? Do you have anyone who springs to mind?
Just all over, can pick anyone.
Pick somebody who would maybe say yes to jump on the show.
Or something, or like a player type, or
who?
You want a tournament guy? High stakes? Do you want a tournament guy or something? Get Joey Ingram.
I asked him. He didn't want. He didn't reply.
He said no. What? No. They really?
He doesn't. I don't think he wants to be interviewed. Like I think I asked him like twice, and I met him in Vegas. Maybe he's going to say yes in the future. Maybe if my channel is going to be bigger. I don't know. He doesn't want to jump on the podcast. Maybe it's also a little bit of a thing. Like he has a podcast, I have a podcast, and yeah, I don't know. Maybe in the future. That would be fun.
Get some PLO guys on. Get the guy who made the app on. I want to hear more about.
Rulers was here. Matthias Rulers Poker. He was here.
All right, I know what I'm going to listen to on the grind then. Sweet.
Yeah.
You can basically ask anyone you find interesting. I think everyone is super approachable. I don't think anyone's going to shut you down. I think people, certainly the high roller community, they're all about growing the game, and we like to do everything that helps. So if you just reach out to anyone you find interesting. I know Steffen's going to do it if you ask him.
Mm-hmm. That would be awesome.
Rainer would be interesting.
Would be awesome.
And, if you need to get in touch with anyone, I'm happy to help.
Thanks a lot. All right.
Joey for someone I really want to see. But yeah.
Okay. I mean, yeah, it would be super interested to do it. All right. I mean, thanks for being my guest today on the Poker Player podcast. This is going to be on iTunes as well. So if you're here on YouTube, I will be uploading that the next few days, as soon as possible, basically. And yeah, I've got a couple of content here lined up. I want to make some videos this month about, what is good for poker, what is bad for poker, picking up some topics, starting the conversation, a little bit of things that we've gone into, and trying to start a movement of people more thinking about poker and trying to do the right thing and not shit on people winning at poker or trying to play their best and stuff. I think that's like really important, and it's something I really care about. So this is what I want to do on this channel. So hope that you're looking forward to that. And yeah, again, thanks for joining here, and I want to have you the last word. And
cool. Yeah, thanks for having me, Andreas. It's been very fun. A bit longer than I thought, but yeah, no. Hope you guys enjoyed, and again, thanks for having me. I hope we can do exactly what you just said, because that would make the poker world a much better place.